A racist cop burst out laughing when a teenage girl walked into court, until she opened her mouth and tore his entire case apart in minutes. What he didn't know? She wasn't the defendant. She was the defense attorney, and a legal prodigy. It started with a smirk, then a chuckle, then a full-blown laugh. Heads turned. In the quiet hum of the courtroom, the sound stood out like a siren. It came from the witness stand, Officer Daniels. Middle-aged, clean-shaven, and wearing the smug look of someone who thought he already won. Why was he laughing? Because the defense had just walked in, a teenage girl, barely 5 feet tall, slim, confident, and young enough to look like she should be sitting in the audience, not standing before the judge. She walked with a briefcase that seemed too big for her small frame. Her shoes clicked softly on the polished courtroom floor. But her presence? It was loud, louder than Officer Daniels's. Mockery. Her name was Imani Green, and she was just 19 years old. The court officer handed her a badge. The judge nodded, and the entire room leaned forward as she approached the defense table. No one knew who she was, at least not yet. Officer Daniels leaned over and whispered to his colleague, loud enough for a few people to hear, "What is this? Bring your daughter to work day?" A few snickers. But the judge didn't smile. He just adjusted his glasses and said calmly, "Miss Green, are you ready to proceed?" Imani looked up, her voice steady. "Yes, Your Honor, the defense is ready." Boom. That moment hit like a hammer. Officer Daniels' smile faded. You could hear a pin drop. "Wait, she's the attorney?" Whispers buzzed across the courtroom benches. "Who is she? Is this a stunt? Is she even licensed?" But the judge already knew. Imani Green had passed the bar at 18, one of the youngest ever in the state. She had spent years preparing for this moment, not just studying the law, but living it. Raised by a single mom who worked 3 jobs, Imani saw injustice from the front row her whole life. She wasn't just smart, she was battle-tested. And now, standing face-to-face with a veteran cop who thought she was a joke, Imani was ready to do what she came for, win. She calmly laid out her files, organized, color-coded, and tabbed. No flashy gadgets, no assistant. Just her brain and the truth. Officer Daniels kept shifting in his seat. The judge noticed. The jury noticed. The laughter was gone now, replaced by silence and a creeping sense of regret. Imani stood and began with a statement so clear, so sharp, that it immediately shifted the energy in the room. This case is not about attitude. It's about abuse of power. And today, we're going to prove that no one, not even those with badges, are above accountability. And just like that, the tide turned. People expected her to stumble, to forget a law, to mispronounce legal terms. Instead, she dismantled lies, exposed contradictions, and walked the courtroom through the arrest step by step, with video evidence, time-stamped reports, and calm confidence. She wasn't angry. She wasn't emotional. She was razor-sharp. The same officer who laughed at her just 15 minutes ago, now wiping sweat from his brow, stumbling through cross-examination. The courtroom, silent, focused, captivated. By a girl they had all underestimated. Imani Green wasn't your average 19-year-old. In fact, she was anything but ordinary. Born and raised in the heart of Atlanta, Georgia, Imani's world was never easy, but it was full of love, resilience, and grit. Her mother, Denise Green, worked nights cleaning corporate offices. During the day, she studied old, borrowed law books from the local library, dreaming of one day becoming a lawyer herself. That dream? She passed it on to her daughter, whether she realized it or not. By the time Imani was 10 years old, she wasn't just reading storybooks, she was flipping through legal briefs, watching courtroom documentaries, and asking questions most adults couldn't answer. Why do poor people get treated differently? What's probable cause? How do you prove someone's innocent? While most kids were memorizing song lyrics, Imani was memorizing the Bill of Rights. And her mother encouraged it every step of the way. By age 14, Imani had already passed her high school equivalency exam. She was the youngest person in her testing center by at least 6 years, and the first one out the door with a perfect score. From there, she fast-tracked through college, earning a criminal justice degree by 16. Professors called her the walking encyclopedia because of her laser memory and her ability to break down complex legal concepts like she was teaching kindergarten. But she wasn't just smart. She was focused. Laser-focused on one goal: justice. See, Imani had seen too many people in her neighborhood mistreated by a system that promised fairness, but delivered fear. She'd seen uncles pulled from cars for no reason, neighbors arrested because they looked suspicious, and her own cousin? Sentenced to 8 years based on shaky evidence and a court-appointed attorney who barely said 5 words. So Imani didn't want to just succeed. She wanted to change the system from the inside. At 18, she passed the state bar exam, on her very first try. That made her one of the youngest licensed attorneys in U.S. history. But with brilliance came doubt, and with success came resistance. People didn't take her seriously. In courtrooms, judges often mistook her for a paralegal or a high school. Intern clerks asked her if she was shadowing someone today. And worst of all, police officers like Officer Daniels scoffed at the idea that someone like her, a young black woman with braids and a southern accent, could ever stand toe-to-toe with them in court. Officer Daniels in particular was the type of cop who believed the courtroom was his turf, that wearing a badge meant always being right. He didn't see Imani as a threat, he saw her as a joke. The smirk he gave when she walked into court? That wasn't just arrogance, it was the product of years of believing that people like her didn't belong in places like this. But he was about to learn something the hard way. You can't laugh away the truth. And when that truth is being delivered by someone who's trained her entire life to fight for justice, well, the courtroom's going to remember her name: Imani Green, a legal prodigy, a voice for the voiceless, and the last person Officer Daniels should have underestimated. The case wasn't just another entry on the court docket. It was a spark, the kind that lights a fire the whole city ends up watching. At the center of it was Marcus Wells, a 22-year-old college student walking home from a friend's house on a quiet Friday evening. He wasn't doing anything wrong, just listening to music, wearing a hoodie, and minding his own business. Then the red and blue lights flashed, a squad car pulled up, and out stepped Officer Daniels. No warning, no explanation. Marcus was told to put his hands up and quit acting suspicious. His crime? Asking why he was being stopped. Within minutes, he was slammed to the ground, handcuffed, and thrown into the back of a police cruiser. The official charge? Resisting arrest. But the problem was, there had been no arrest to resist, no warrant, no reasonable suspicion, no crime. And yet, Marcus spent 2 nights in jail, with a criminal record now hanging over his head like a storm cloud. He'd nearly lost his scholarship, his job, his future. His mother cried every night. Marcus stopped leaving the house. He told reporters later, "I thought speaking up would protect me, but it just made things worse." Then came a phone call that changed everything. A young attorney named Imani Green wanted to take his case. Marcus didn't know what to expect. He was told she was only 19. Some people even said she looked more like a student than a lawyer. But when Imani sat down with Marcus, she didn't see a case. She saw herself. Another young black life nearly ruined by a system that expected silence, not resistance. She told Marcus, "They're counting on you to stay quiet, but we won't give them what they want." And from that moment on, Imani worked day and night to build the defense. She filed for body cam footage. She pulled the officer's disciplinary history, 5 prior complaints for excessive force. She found bystanders who had filmed parts of the encounter. She even got a copy of Marcus's GPS records, proving he was simply walking home and had never left the sidewalk. She studied case law, cited precedent, mapped out a strategy like a seasoned litigator twice her age. By the time the trial date arrived, Imani had enough evidence to rip the prosecution's story to shreds. But Officer Daniels didn't see any of that. When she entered the courtroom, he leaned over to his colleague and whispered, just loud enough to be heard, "This is a joke. They let kids play lawyer now?" His words hung in the air like smoke. He was already laughing, because he had no idea that she'd built her entire case to bury him with the truth. He didn't know that Imani had practiced every argument, memorized every inconsistency in his report, and coordinated expert witnesses who were ready to testify, under oath. He didn't know that this kid walking into court was about to deliver a defense so airtight, so precise, that even the judge would raise an eyebrow. She had one goal, not to embarrass Officer Daniels, not even to impress the court. Her goal was simple: expose the lies, clear Marcus's name, and prove that justice, no matter your age or race, still belongs in the courtroom. And she was about to do exactly that. The courtroom held its breath as Imani Green stood from her chair. She moved with calm, quiet confidence. No theatrics, no raised voice. Just the kind of composure that comes from knowing you've already won, before anyone else realizes it. She walked to the front of the courtroom and looked directly at the man who had laughed at her that very morning. "Officer Daniels," she began politely, "you stated in your report that Marcus Wells was acting suspiciously. Could you clarify what exactly he did?" Daniels shifted in his seat. "He looked nervous. He was avoiding eye contact and wouldn't give me a clear answer." Imani nodded. "So, just to be clear, you believed he was a threat because he looked nervous?" "That's right." She paused, flipping a page in her notes, then looked up with a small, knowing smile. "And at any point, did Marcus raise his voice? Use threatening language? Or resist you physically?" Daniels replied quickly. "He refused to comply. He kept asking questions and didn't follow orders." "Interesting," Imani said, walking a slow circle toward the evidence screen. She clicked a remote. "Let's talk about your body cam footage." The courtroom lights dimmed slightly as the video played on the monitor. Marcus was calm, his voice clear and even. "Why? Am I being stopped, officer?" His hands up, visible, non-threatening. The courtroom watched in silence. Imani turned back to Daniels. "Is that the voice of someone being aggressive?" Daniels hesitated. Maybe not aggressive, but..." She cut in. "Thank you. Now, earlier you testified under oath that there was no additional video of the incident. Is that correct?" Daniels nodded confidently. "That's correct." Imani blinked once, then turned toward the judge. "Your Honor," she said, "I'd like to submit new digital evidence. This is a live stream video captured by a bystander and uploaded to TikTok. Time-stamped, geotagged, real-time, no edits." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." Imani clicked the next video. This time, the room gasped. The footage showed Officer Daniels approaching Marcus aggressively, shouting within seconds using profanity, and grabbing Marcus's wrist despite no provocation whatsoever. There was no resistance, no threat, just a young man asking a question, and an officer responding with force. Daniels' face turned pale, then red. Imani wasn't done. She pulled out the officer's written report. "You said the incident began at 8:47 p.m. Your GPS log says you were still 2 blocks away at that time." She held up another sheet. "Your report also says Marcus lunged at you. But the video and your own body cam show him frozen, hands up until you grabbed him." Daniels opened his mouth. No words came out. Imani turned to the jury. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're not just looking at a false arrest. We're looking at a fabricated narrative, one built on lies, intimidation, and the hope that no one would question the story because of who Marcus is." She looked Daniels in the eye. Unfortunately for Officer Daniels, someone did question it. The judge leaned back, visibly shaken. Gasps turned into murmurs. The prosecution sat frozen. No objections. No arguments. Just shock. The courtroom had just watched a masterclass. Imani didn't yell. She didn't need to. She let the truth speak for itself, calmly, confidently, and with surgical precision. And for the first time all day, Officer Daniels didn't have a single thing to say. The courtroom was silent. After Imani Green's cross-examination, there were no more questions, only answers. Answers that exposed a lie and revealed a young black man's truth. The judge took a long pause. He looked at Officer Daniels, who was now visibly sweating, his confident smirk replaced with dread. Then he looked at Imani. "Miss Green," he said, "you've presented one of the most thorough, professional, and compelling defenses I've seen in this courtroom in years." He turned to the jury. But they didn't need long. Less than 15 minutes later, they returned with their verdict. We find the defendant, Marcus, Wells, not guilty on all charges. The courtroom erupted, not in chaos, but in stunned relief. Marcus hugged his mother, who was in tears. He was free. His record, cleared. His future, still intact. As for Officer Daniels, the judge ordered an immediate investigation into misconduct and perjury. He was escorted out of the courtroom, badge trembling in his hand. And Imani Green? She packed her briefcase quietly. No victory dance, no arrogance, just a slight smile and a deep breath. Because for her, this wasn't just about winning a case. It was about sending a message. The courtroom belongs to the truth, and the truth has no age limit. Imani Green may be fictional, but her fight is very real. Every day, someone like Marcus is silenced, mistreated, or wrongly accused. And it takes courage to stand up, speak out, and fight back. If you believe in justice, in truth, and in the power of standing up for what's right, hit that like button to show your support. Subscribe for more real stories that inspire change. And in the comments, tell us, what would you have done if you were in Imani's shoes? Share this video with someone who needs to see what justice looks like when it's done right. Turn on notifications so you never miss a story that matters.